Hey, welcome to Guitar Knobs, the guitars, gear, noise, and nonsense podcast, hosted today by these knobs.
Jared Brandon.
Chris Graham.
Me, Todd Novak, and our special, super duper special guest, Jeff Schroeder.
Yeah, this is Jeff from the Smashing Pumpkins.
Yes, Jeff Schroeder of the Smashing Pumpkins, and we are super excited for him to be on the show today. We are equally excited for everyone else who is listening. We are constantly gaining new listeners around the world, and that's just like incredibly exciting. So thank you so much. And if anybody feels like they want to throw me a shout and just say, hey, what's going on from wherever you're at, I would love that. I've gotten quite a few messages, both on Facebook as well as via the website. So they're so appreciated, guys, and we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'm going to say appreciate one more time because I appreciate that. All right. So anyone who's heard this a few times, let's just reiterate the fact we're coming from Columbus, Ohio. That's where our home base is. And it is it's a nice little town. And we dig it. And it's got a cool music scene and a lot of guitar nerds here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of guitar knobs, too, in this room.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's get to it. Let's talk about what are a few things that's happened in our guitar worlds this week, starting with Jared.
Well, for those of you that have been listening for a long time, for a while, you know that what I do for a living, I build electric guitar pickups. Been doing it for about 10 years. So with that, I bought a couple of new winders this past week, and I'm really excited about that. I'm going to have tooling done to them so they can do 4 bobbins at a time. That's 4 humbucker bobbins at a time. So with my current setup right now, plus these 2 new winders, I'll be able to do 12 different bobbins at a time. I won't be doing that, though. I'll just be, having one type of wire on this and another type of wire in the other. So I'm thoroughly excited about that. I just love getting new stuff to add to the shop. It's what I do every day. It's my life. I just love it. As far as actually playing guitar, I got my old Gibson Les Paul out the other day, and I noticed the strings were kind of dead. So I'm not sure exactly what gauge I want to put on this, but just more maintenance, and that's pretty much it.
Man, way to excite the living hell out of all of us. Thank you, Jared.
Well, especially about the winders. I'm sure everybody's trying to picture, huh? What's going on?
No, that is awesome. Your little shop downstairs in your basement is really cool. And I know if you're buying a new winder, that means your business is up, and that's good news. Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you. Are you going to be stocking new string? New wire?
I don't. Oh yeah. When you said strings, I'm like, guitar strings? What? No, I'll just be buying more because the whole point is to have other winders for other types of wire, so I'm not switching wire out all the time. So that's the whole point of that.
Awesome. Chris.
Yeah. So in my guitar life lately, I bought a tube tester recently. I have a mastering studio. That's what I do for a living, and we have a lot of tube gear in there. So I finally got a tube tester so I can be testing my vacuum tubes on different amplifiers and stuff like that. And so it was fun. I've been collecting tubes for years, and finally was able to start going through my collections and figuring out what was trash and what was really good. And lo and behold, I was digging through my collection, and I found 2 gray plate RCA 6V6 tubes.
Those are the old ones, right?
Yeah, super fantastic, amazing tubes that tested perfect. So my main guitar amp is an old Fender Princeton reverb from the 60s, and those are the right tubes for that amp. So,
I mean, I guess so.
I guess so. But it was pretty fun. Like I've never had a tube tester before, and you plug the tube in and you go through all these extensive switches and knobs. Yeah, it's got a lot of knobs on it. And
Jeff, are you a tube meister?
Yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, most of the amps that I use live, I still use old tube amps, so it's always a struggle to find ones that sound good,
right? Especially
these days.
Totally. Well, and that's for me. Like I love tube rolling, as I think the term of just swapping different tubes in and seeing, wow, this sounds good and that one doesn't, and finding just that sweet combination of the right preamp tubes and the right inverter tube and the right power tubes and the right rectifier tube. So now it's nice and that there's a dynamic to that where I don't have to just sort of plug it in and listen to see if I like the tube or not. I can tell if like, oh, this one has a short in it and it will explode my amp if I continue to use this. So
I see those pop up on Craigslist or, quite a few. There's usually one up.
Well, there's a guy here in town in Columbus, Ohio, who buys tube testers on eBay and then repairs them and then prints out the manual and resells them. And I bought it directly from him. And I met him at a coffee shop, and he opened the trunk of his van and gave me lessons on how to use a tube tester.
Wow, that's cool.
What's this fella's name, by the way? Is it Randy?
It might be Randy. That sounds familiar.
Is he from like South Columbus down 23?
Yeah.
That guy is a fantastic amp guy. He does all my amps.
Big shout to Randy, the fantastic amp guy.
Yeah. Vintage Amp Repair is his website, and it's just this big circuitsy, huge website. It's got a little nook, or it's got something in every little nook and cranny on there. It's very busy. But the guy is fantastic when it comes to fixing amps and stuff. He knows his stuff. He
was great with the tube tester. It's just been such a relief. Like I've been for years pulling over to the side of the road with my kids in the car when I see like an old organ or something like that, and I'm just like, yoinks, vacuum tubes.
Right.
Put them in my basement, and now I can actually tell whether it's safe to put it in something or not. Now.
Yeah.
Randy Atkins, I think that's his name. Well, anyway.
I don't recall.
All right. Well, glad we cleared that up. Jeff, why don't you tell us what's going on in your guitar world today?
Guitar world stuff. Well, actually, kind of one thing I want to talk about real quick is a soundtrack that I've been working on.
Oh, yeah, man. Lay it on
for
us.
A movie called Where It Begins. The Indiegogo campaign started 2 days ago. So I can provide you guys a link, and maybe you can put it on your website and stuff.
Yeah,
but
yeah, absolutely.
It's a documentary that originally kind of started about the indie music scene out of Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, but it's kind of taken on a bigger scope, and it's about independent music from the late 70s up to the early 2000s or so. And so I'm doing like some extra music for it. And so that just started. So that's kind of the biggest thing that's going on this week. But other than that, I've been I want to give a shout out to I've been started taking guitar lessons, I don't know, for about 6 months to my jazz teacher, Tony Del Rosario. And he's like my guitar guru now. So he's got me every week. I'm just like sweating like crazy because I'm just, not be a bad student.
That's awesome.
So it's funny. I feel like I'm 13 again. But I try to take it a little more seriously. So that's what I've kind of been focusing on. So
killer. And it's worth mentioning you're calling from Chicago today, right?
Which one?
You.
Oh, me.
You're calling from Chicago?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, I thought you said my colleague from Chicago. Yes, from Chicago.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So
we're kind of neighbors, basically.
Yeah, a little bit. We're Midwest neighbors. Yeah.
Yeah.
So once we get that link, we'll make sure and get that on your.
I found it.
Yeah, on your episode.
Oh yeah. Okay, you guys found it. Yeah. And I actually, I and Yamaha donated a guitar. That was one of the whatever items you could buy, and actually someone already bought it, so that was really cool.
Oh wow, nice. Awesome.
Yeah,
cool.
I was pretty excited about that.
Yeah, and we're going to get into your relationship with Yamaha and all the other guitar stuff in just a little bit here.
Yeah.
So as for me, I Well, this week I spent a lot of time getting ready. So I've got a show coming up, and I was just spending time re-gearing, make sure I got all the right pedals and junk that I need, restringing,
Testing chords out,
doing all the stuff. I'm pretty thorough before a show, and also so one of the things I do is a Clash tribute, and I needed to put some new writing on the guitar, and so to kind of, I think that the flavor of the times is resist, so that's on the guitar now.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that's what I was doing. Nice, short, sweet, simple. And I'm way more interested in talking to you today. So let's get to this. So now we have our brand new segment called
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4 on the floor.
This is the 4 pedals that you cannot live without. What are they and why?
Awesome. Now this was kind of a tough one to really think about this, but these are in no particular order. They are all important. But the first thing that almost any gig that I have played in the last 8 years, I have either a modified Line 6 M13 or a M9, and I have them modded by Jack Vaughn at JVH3. He's a kind of semi-friend of mine, just corresponded over email, and he's come to a couple gigs. But he does something to the audio path of these that take it into like this other level of really clean, beautiful sound. It really enhances the reverbs and delays in particular, and it makes it like a really great buffer. So if you're doing like a longer cable run, it's really remarkable. So that pedal, one of those, which is kind of a Swiss Army knife type of thing anyway, I use all the time. So that would be one. Second pedal would be the Catlin Bred Bell Epoch delay. And I kind of have that thing on all the time because the just what it does, like the emulation of the preamp of the EP3 is really, really good. And obviously the delay sounds great. And I just love the people at Catlin Bred. Stephanie Howard and the late Nicholas were, kind of friends of mine. And when Stephanie and Nicholas, they'd come to Chicago, I'd take them out to eat and stuff. So it was, really sad when Nicholas passed. But I just love the company he created. And so the Bell Epoch is huge. And I'm really excited for the Bell Epoch Deluxe that debuted at NAMM. I heard it's supposed to be even better. It's supposed to be like the closest you can get to a real Echoplex without actually having one.
And is that the deluxe? So that would be the deluxe aspect of that pedal?
Yeah, because because the small one runs at 9 volts, or you can run it up to 18. But to really get the sound of the Echoplex is that it's got to run at 22 volts, and so he's figured out some way to up the power. It's in a bigger encasing, and I guess the circuit is like if you open it up, it is exactly the same as Echoplex except for the tape part. So
wow,
it's supposed to be really, really great. And I had another brand I had a full tone, the solid state tape echo when that came out like a year or so ago, 2 years ago.
Yep.
And ended up not keeping it for various reasons, but that that was like the real deal. And let me tell you, it's awesome. Like when you play through the real thing, it really does make a difference. So I'm curious to see how this deluxe works. But another pedal that I have to have that's become a mainstay is the Eventide H9.
Okay.
I started buying the individual pedals that they made, and then I graduated into getting the H9, and I have, I think, 3 of them now.
That's a programmable one, right?
Yeah. You can download the algorithms that you want from their website or something like that, and then you can edit them all, like on your iPad or your iPhone.
Wow, that's kind of taking the TC electronic thing a little bit further.
Yeah, and it's great, and I just love the Eventide sound. It's definitely a thing. I wouldn't call their pedals transparent. Like when you turn on an Eventide thing, it has a particular sound, but I really love it. I really like it. It's something that I've kind of grown up listening to on records for so long. So I really like a lot of their can't live without some of their things. So
if you wouldn't mind, is there a particular record or sound that drove you to recapturing that? You mentioned, kind of growing up with that. Is there somebody that had that you're like, I want to sound like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, all the, the Steve Vai stuff from Passion and Warfare, that Eventide, harmonizer was all over that album.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one. And then, you hear like a lot of Robert Fripp stuff, when those came out, he started using those things a lot. And yeah, pretty much, I think in the 80s, a lot of guys had them,
Yeah.
And I think people like Flood, as a producer and engineer, use those in the studio quite a bit. So you hear it a lot on, kind of ambient noise and stuff on records.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The reverbs and delays are just beautiful. They're really beautiful, really gorgeous. Yeah.
Nice.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then the last thing I have is a tie because it's by the same company. I have a Tone Freak Naked Overdrive when I'm using my Marshall rig, or his new Pineapple Overdrive for when I play through Fenders. And the Naked is basically, it's kind of like a semi-distorted boost, but it really only, to me, it doesn't really sound that great in front of a clean amp. It's really meant to play in front of a kind of a cranked Marshall.
Gotcha.
And it just gives you, and then the Pineapple is more in the Klon vein type of drive. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so those are my 4 on the floor.
Awesome.
4.5 on the floor.
4.5 on the floor.
That H9 can do more, is a multi-effect, so I don't know if it counts as one.
Well, the F13 too has like 70 effects in it or something.
I think that's being pretty smart and efficient with your 4 choices.
It is. I'm lusting after this Eventide H9 right now. I've heard of him, but I never really looked into it. I want one now.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, so let's get into this. One of the reasons that we are talking to Jeff, ironically, I didn't exactly seek him out. I didn't say, hey, guys, let's talk about who we want to have on the show. And we just, write down a whole bunch of names and stuff. It's kind of funny how our connection happened. I'd been posting, Instagram stuff. And as everybody knows, I spent a lot of time on Instagram. And I kept seeing him pop up. And honestly, I was just going to let it be because, I don't want to chase somebody down. That's a little weird. But I just decided, you know what? I would love to hear his perspective as a player, as a guitar nut who's had to make choices with his gear based on the different things he's played in his career. And I thought that'd be a really cool perspective. So I took a chance and we connected, and here you are. And I'm thrilled about that.
I'm happy to be here.
So now that I've given you, a moderate introduction, I think it's definitely worth saying the other side of that is, I grew up, we're not far off in age. I think I'm about 3 years older than you, maybe, Jeff. And so when I hear you playing, I hear a lot of my musical history too. And that was an exciting thing for me. I'm like, man, this guy's playing the kind of stuff like that I grew up listening to that impacted me. And obviously one of those things was Smashing Pumpkins. And the fact that you're playing in that is cool. But the fact that your guitar voice and looking into your previous bands and stuff is like, that was like always there. It's like you were always doing that, which is really neat. You didn't have to like fully change or adapt or anything. Or maybe you did. I don't know. Let's find out. So tell us, where did you start? How did you start on your road in your life in guitar?
Well, I'm originally from the LA area, so I'm a California boy. And
me too.
Only recently, I've only lived in Chicago for maybe 3.5 years or so. So I basically grew up on the West Coast, California. Probably started playing like serious, kind of got into the guitar pretty early because my brother's 8 years older than me, and he was a Kiss fanatic. Mm-hmm. So I'm born in '74. I think really, and I'm not even making this up, I think my earliest memory as a child, so about three and a half, was my dad took my brother and maybe two other kids from the neighborhood to see Kiss in 1977 at the Forum on the Love Gun tour.
Oh,
it was
man.
Like the historic tour, Kiss, Cheap Trick. And I remember staying up with my mom, sitting there, and then I remember my brother coming home with like the massive tour book and all that kind of stuff. And so it's really like one of my first memories as a child. So, and we shared a room for a while, so it was like Kiss posters and so just pictures of Ace Frehley everywhere. And I just like, man, he's just looks so cool with the guitar. And so my brother was always really into music and was friends with a lot of musicians. And so I just was like, man, I want to play the guitar. And when I was 7 or 8, got an acoustic guitar and didn't take it seriously. But when I was about 13, I got an electric and started taking lessons. I walked into, I had a guitar, walked into a music store one day and started talking to, like, one of the teachers was out there, and he's like, what are you into? And he's, when you're 13, it's pre-internet, all that kind of stuff. And he was playing like Eruption and Hot for Teacher and all this stuff, like 2 feet from my face. And to see someone actually able to do that was really like kind of mind blowing. I couldn't believe it. And so I started studying with him for about 3 years. And so I learned a lot, scales, modes, basic harmony. And then, so then by the time I was in high school, trying to think, like, it's kind of hard. It's like so long ago now. I played in a couple bands, garage bands, but luckily right after I graduated high school, I ran into my guitar teacher that I had taken all those lessons from again. And we started tying. I was like, hey, I want to take a few lessons again. So he was teaching actually out of his house now. And so one day we're playing, and then I left, and I guess his roommate was next door in they shared a wall, and went to him, was like, hey, who was that playing with you today? And he was like, oh, it's one of my students. He goes, oh, can I get his number? Because my band, we're looking for a guitar player. And so I joined this band, and, I started playing LA and Hollywood when I was 18. As soon as I was out of high school, I started playing, and I started playing like all those clubs, Whiskey,
Viper
Roxy, Troubadour, Viper Room. Oh, Viper Room, I don't even know if it was the Viper Room yet in 92. I mean, it's pretty early. But anyways, so I started playing in bands up in LA, like really early on, and did that for a while. And then I'm just kind of giving.
What was your starting? Going back to when you first started, like what was your first guitar?
It was some Japanese Strat copy. I actually still have it. It's at the warehouse where we store all the gear. I keep everything. I'm like a gear. I'm sadly it's gotten but I still have it. It was like a blue Strat copy.
You got 3 nodding, smiling heads at you for that.
Well, yeah, because I think we all regret getting rid of something in the past.
Yeah, we had a whole episode on that.
Hang on to it, Jeff.
Or in my case, taking it completely apart and not being able to put it back together. The death of my first guitar.
Whoops.
Yeah, I mean, my first guitar was a Harmony acoustic, from like a catalog Harmony.
Yeah.
And I still have it.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
Still have it, yeah.
That's rad. Okay, so you joined up with this guy. So he recognized you had a little special way with the guitar.
Yeah, and I think in the '90s and alternative music, and what ultimately led me get into the Pumpkins was, it was kind of a weird time because, I started, like I said, I started taking lessons in 1987, and you can imagine what that was like in terms of guitar. The guitar culture of the time was very much hard rock centered, Guitar Heroes, and I loved it. I was very much into those players. I loved all those bands, and was very influenced by that stuff stylistically. But by the time I graduated high school, that world had completely changed.
Yeah.
And
I remember that time.
Yeah, and so I was able to be right on that brink, and I even when I was in high school, I didn't listen to only hard rock and heavy metal. I listened to all types of things. I was into, new wave stuff, and I loved like people like Eric Johnson. I went and saw Eric Johnson. I went and saw Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jeff Beck.
Oh, man.
So I loved. I mean, I really loved all types of guitar playing. But when alternative music came in, it was really, it was like there was that moment of time where you had players like Billy Corgan and Dave Navarro from Jane's Addiction was another one that were really coming from both worlds, hard rock, alternative, and combining two, had this new style of playing that was, had the energy of hard rock music, but then some maybe more of the textures of alternative and new wave and post-punk.
Yeah.
So I think
definitely.
So I think being kind of coming of age during that time was really, an advantage for me.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah.
I think it's funny you mentioned Dave Navarro, because I think one of the certainly it was one of my huge guitar mentors growing up. But when you talk about some of those people, I think the key to one of the reasons that they're still really relevant now and why they were so influential is that for that reason that you mentioned, they didn't put themselves into a box. They played with a style that incorporated a lot of things, but not too much. They left openness in their playing.
Yeah.
And that's also something that I really see in your playing too, texturally, and just it's just super enjoyable to listen to, whether there's a song behind it or not. I'm specifically referencing for anyone who hasn't or is not familiar with some of the videos that Jeff's in online on YouTube. He did some videos for Yamaha, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But they're, this one in particular where you're just jamming with a bass player and a drummer. I mean, man, I must have watched that, I don't know, way too many times.
Oh, that's cool. And the interesting thing is, like, I'd never played with those guys. We just showed up and we just, jammed for like 4 or 5 hours, and they filmed a bunch of it and put stuff together. I mean, obviously those guys were top musicians. I mean, they're both great. Yeah. And so that was all
your
basically
playing was so improvised. Open in that.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, it was fun. I mean, it was just such a awesome opportunity just to play with really good people. And people could just throw ideas out there and be like, okay, let's do that, boom, 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 and then within 10 minutes you're playing stuff. It was cool.
Yeah. Wild. So cool. I think one of the things I want to get to this part, because I think this was like one of the interesting things about the potential to talk to you about guitar is that you obviously had developed your own way of playing, your own voice, but yet you also are jumping into a band that already has a relatively pronounced one. I mean, fortunately, I think those two married up really well. But tell us about it. Was that a struggle at all to have to take on someone else's voice to a degray?
Oh, it was really hard at first because I thought I was obviously very familiar with the band. I saw the band a bunch of times. I had all the records, and I thought I could play the riffs. But once you're really in the room and you're playing the riffs with the guitar player and the drummer who wrote and recorded them, it's a whole different level of playing in terms of attack, rhythm, placement of the notes. It was really, really hard at first, because I wasn't, Billy and Jimmy have almost like they don't even talk about timings and stuff because they're like on a telepathic level with it. And so it's very intuitive for them to play the way they play. And then for someone like me as an outsider, have to kind of break it down and figure out how it works. It was pretty hard at first. I put in a lot of hours of trying to figure it out. And so now Billy and I play together and we never talk about what we're going to do. We can we can fall in together pretty easily. But an interesting thing that people, really obsess about, like, Billy's sound on those early records. And a lot of it is, it is like a the guitar and the pedal, and all like, what big muff is it, and all that kind of stuff. And I have to say, like, it's really not that. It's the way he plays. You know what I mean? It's the way it's the way he attacks the guitar. It's the way he hits the strings. It's that gives it so. And then that's accentuated by the amp, the guitar. But I mean, he sounds the same. And I mean that as a compliment on really like any rig he plays. He gets that sound, and like we never use fuzz pedals live. Like we're always just use like it's more like high gain amp distortion, and people are always asking like. What fuzz pedals are you using? And we're like, we don't use fuzz pedals live.
Wild.
And people don't believe it, but it's the way that it's the attack, the way we hit the guitar and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it definitely took a while for me to wrap my head around that, because it was like, whoa, it's someone else's thing.
I think what would be probably pretty interesting, for everyone to hear about is, just are there any processes or tips and tricks as far as, when you were trying to kind of combine your voice with the Smashing Pumpkins and take on someone else's voice as well. Were you recording it and then playing back with it, or were you slowing stuff down, or were there any sort of processes?
I can give you like kind of a more esoteric answer and then a more practical answer, and because I would say that the bigger advice, which doesn't necessarily seem practical at first, is it would be develop your ears. And that takes years of really because I thought, you have a pretty good ear. But after playing with the band for a long time, I realized like, man, like my listening, my ability to hear things and not only hear myself how I'm playing with the band, but hear yourself kind of outside of that context while you're playing is really what great musicians are able to do. They're able to kind of hear in this bigger way, and that's taken me a long time. But then in terms of really just like learning how to play the rhythm system, I had and I got it right here because I still use it. It's a Tascam. Let me see, like a GT1 guitar trainer, and it's a little. At the time, they make an MP3 version now, a digital version, but I had a CD version. Or I have one, and you can put a CD in, and you can loop sections of songs and slow it down. And so I could really like slow things down to half speed, but it doesn't change the pitch.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so
that's awesome.
So you can sit there and just loop a guitar riff over and over and over until you can just get it and get the nuances of the riff with the drums perfect. So to me, that's to this day is still a invaluable tool. I mean, when I'm trying to learn things or learn solos or learn other people, other songs or other parts, I still use that. That's like I think that transformed my guitar playing more than anything else.
No kidding. And let's reiterate that product real quick.
Yeah, let me see if I can grab it here without disconnecting. Yeah, here is the Tascam GT1 portable CD guitar trainer. And I don't even know. I doubt if they make this particular one anymore. I think they're all MP3 or WAV file versions.
Yeah, it looks like there's a GTR1 that's
out now. Yeah. But they're great. It really, because you can nowadays, a lot of people go online and you can learn stuff or get tab, but to learn stuff by ear, that's combined what I was talking about, like improving your ear and like something very practical, just learning a song, learning a riff.
Yeah. Well, that's super interesting. I feel like, not to be too fanboyish here, but like I can't imagine many bands that'd be more difficult to join. So I'm going to perpetuate, the tone and the, intricacies of the arrangements that they have, that they're going to be playing every night.
Well, especially with the mythical nature of those recordings, he's recording with a, several hundred track, board and all that stuff.
The average person think, well, why would a guitar player have a hard time? It would be this, if you were to replace a singer.
Yeah.
That's got to be a super painful process.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do, but yeah, people don't understand the whole player concept as well. And I really liked how you explained how it's really not effects and all that kind of thing, but more of how you attack the string And
Yeah,
I myself am a firm believer of that.
It's the vibrato. It's like I mean, even on chords, it's like a certain vibrato, a certain attack, like where you're picking on the guitar, and it's a whole like cloud of different things that are existing all at once.
So I'm gonna play a little bit of devil's advocate real quick. Obviously you have to get the the sound via your ear and everything, but I know that I'm tapping this because I know a little bit about from watching your videos and stuff. Like there had to have been a certain point of, all right, I got the song down. Now what's the right gear for this band?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, before I joined the band, I was strictly a Fender type of person. I had a Jazzmaster, Strat, Telecaster. Never owned a Gibson in my life. And so when I joined the band, Billy was like, hey, kind of the core of the sound is a Strat and a Les Paul. So I know you've never played Les Pauls, but, would you mind trying? And so I started playing Les Pauls, and I mean, that's been a big journey of finding actually the types that I like and stuff. But yeah, that's definitely part of it. And I mean, and as you guys know, from going from a Strat or a Fender to a Gibson is like two different worlds.
Yeah. Big time.
It's not. Yeah, I mean, obviously the scale from 24 and 3/4 to 25 and a half, I think. I'm not sure if that's exactly correct, but I think it is. So the guitar is, the neck, the string tension feels different, but then just the body designs are so radically different. The way they feel on your body and all that stuff, it's like, wow,
Yeah.
it was pretty hard for me at first to play like how I would want to play on a Gibson, on a Les Paul or something like that.
So is there a particular Gibson that you have now that you favor over the others?
Yeah, I started with customs because that's, I was what always was used on the recordings, but through good friends, cool, guitar techs, mostly he's still a close friend of mine, Jason Baskin. He's a guitar tech now for the Zach Brown band.
Okay. Awesome
guy. And he was like, man, he's like, you ever check out standards? Les Paul standards. And I was like, I kind of, at the time, I wasn't into the sunburst because it looked bad, but now I love it. I'm like, oh my gosh. And so actually ended up, we needed to buy some guitars because we were building a rig and a B rig for send one place, one another place. And so I ended up getting two, like the VOS, really nice Les Paul custom shop standards, and two of those in one gold top.
Nice.
And and those just, I never play my customs I don't play the Les Paul customs anymore. I had two Les Paul customs and they just sit in the warehouse now because I realize I like standards, and I actually even use like Seymour Duncan, the whole lot of humbuckers, so it's like kind of the Jimmy Page kind of thing. And I mean, I just love it. I love more of that. It's kind of a lighter, more open sound.
Yeah. Well, Jared actually has a Jimmy Page shirt on right now, and he's like, I think he's a little red in the face. He's blushing a little bit because he loves the Jimmy Page.
Oh yeah. I have a set that I kind of model after him too as well, and they're probably similar to the whole lot humbucker. But Seymour Duncan, when I think of him, I think of right now he's the reigning, probably one of the best pickup builders, and has some of the best product out there. But go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say I agree. I've used pickups from all different companies, and I mean there's so many. I mean it's like the best time to be a guitar player. You can get all kinds of great stuff. But yeah, Duncans are, for like a big company, I think that they just do it right.
They do.
Yeah.
So Jeff, you have, if anybody is looking for you on the internet, as far as like not personally, that'd be weird, but for it's for guitar stuff, they're going to see a lot of Yamaha.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. So my friend who actually, not my friend, he is my friend now, but my artist rep at Seymour Duncan started working at Yamaha. So one day he's like, hey, I'm switching companies. I'm working at Yamaha. Would you mind if I sent you some acoustic guitars to check out? We have these acoustics, and they're pretty cool. I think you might like them. And I've been playing Taylors live, which are obviously like super, super nice guitars, but this really wasn't my thing. It wasn't like what I like. I never really was much of an acoustic player before I was in the band, and didn't really know what I liked in terms of acoustics. And the Taylors worked very good live and stuff. And so I was like, yeah, send these out. And he sent me a couple. And Billy and I were preparing for a show that we were doing at Ravinia out here, which is like a big outdoor theater. And I started using those in rehearsal. He's like, man, you know what? Like, those guitars sound great. And he's like, when we play together, I can hear you better. Like the frequency range that they're occupying, it's is more that works in harmony with the guitars that I'm playing. So I started using some of these Yamaha L series acoustics, and I like the concert size ones a little bit smaller because Billy likes to play jumbos, and so I like a little bit of a thinner sound to kind of cut over the top of what he's playing. And I play a lot more kind of counter melodies and higher voice chords anyway against his stuff, so it works really nice. So yeah, I started playing those acoustics, and then just over the years the relationship started developing more, and they're like, hey, you want to try some of these electrics? And started playing some of their electrics, and yeah, they've been really, and now Billy started playing the acoustics, and so they've been really, really supportive of the band and gone out of their way to make sure we're taken care of. But we just really like the acoustics. Just, I know people may not believe it because Yamaha sometimes doesn't always have the best reputation as far as like high-end stuff. But like I said, we were using the Taylors for many years, and then once we switched to Yamahas, we were getting so many compliments on the acoustic guitar sound live. Yeah.
Well, I think that's something that generationally is probably responsible for that. The gap, because many years ago, like Yamaha was well known and made very, very good stuff, and I think as people chase down their stars and then they emulate the gear that they have, things change. Before Guns N' Roses came out, it's like you could get a Les Paul for pretty dang cheap.
I know.
And then after, forget it. So it goes in waves where people tend to gravitate. Right now, everybody's mental about offset guitars, and who knows how long that'll last.
But go ahead.
I have a Yamaha pedal that I have that my dad bought like brand new in 1986. I still use it today. It's never broke. It's a good quality product. I've never had a problem with Yamaha at all.
Yeah.
No, it's funny because, the thing is they, I think as a company, they don't very often take advantage of their past in terms of I think there's a few very, iconic pieces of gear that they've made that people really still want, the FG, the NS10s and the FG180 acoustic, which actually they just did an anniversary model, and they actually gave me one, which is really cool. But I think if they reissued something like that, people would be really into it, because that's, Elliott Smith played that, and a lot of artists like gravitate towards that acoustic. It's a cool guitar.
So gear is super good. We all acknowledge that, and I think we all would want a glimpse into your warehouse. That sounds awesome.
No, it is. It's pretty insane.
Yeah,
I have to say, yeah.
So let me continue on this thread real quick here. So we mentioned how you had to you cultivated your own voice, then came into something that you had to adapt to a little bit. at a certain point, I would imagine that your voice would become to be much more prevalent as the band progresses. And I had a question from one of our listeners, Ron Brené, and I just want to reference it real quick. He said, most guitarists, new and experienced, have this preconceived notion that they need to discover their tone. This is great and all, but something that has been pretty liberating for me as a player is to let go of the idea that I need to find one specific tone that defines everything about my playing, et cetera, down to basically don't get caught up in chasing one tone, but rather look for different tones that inspire you and build from there. That seems like that would be the kind of thinking that would play into, okay, how is you, Jeff, and Pumpkins dovetailing, and then how do you gain your own voice? Can you do you want to address that at all?
Yeah, it's funny. I think that when I was younger, I somehow got into more of the framework of having many sounds, and I still do to a certain extent. Really having to and with the Pumpkins gig, I have to really cover a lot of sonic territory, and so I think more come from that mindset of not having like the one sound. But as I kind of get older, I really respect players who kind of worked more within that framework, because I think one of the, as much as, and I love gear, and I know you guys, and I'm actually interested in hearing your guys, all your perspectives on this, is as I feel like as in terms of gear and tone, we're really in an unprecedented age where you have the whole history of guitar tone literally available to you. You can get some form of emulation of almost everything, whether it's a digital modeling type of emulation or a pedal like the Bell Epoch Deluxe, that really you have access to these things that were pretty hard to get for a long time. That only certain people could get. And I guess nowadays I get a little bit of like gear anxiety or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's so much, and I can like over obsess about what I'm using.
Yeah.
And think, is there something better out there? Is there, and then when I think about a lot of the players that we all really know and love, they were using pretty simple things, tube screamers, electro-harmonics pedals, MXR stuff, because, really there wasn't a lot available in the 70s or 80s compared to now.
Right.
Comparatively.
I think an interesting thing with that is, I was thinking this the other day, like you look at how many pedals came out at NAMM this year. I almost wonder if we're kind of on the edge of a pedal bubble. There's a pubble, if you will. There are so many options out there that it's awesome, but it's also overwhelming of like how many different tube screamers are available right now, different models from various companies. There's got to be 1,000 of them.
That goes into a different aspect, though, because I don't think that necessarily, we've kind of talked about this a little bit before, and I know, Jeff being in Chicago, there's definitely a Chicagoan musician kind of thing, especially when it comes to gear. That's like Gear Central, man. And places like Chicago Music Exchange in and of itself are, getting in a lot of trouble there. I kind of had to stop going just because I would just go in there and, it's like a bad drug habit. Yeah. So when we're talking about, but there's another one and another one, I don't think it seems to be as much about chasing a better one as much as it is finding that thing that resonates with you, whether it's like, hey, I really respect what this builder is about, or hey, he's from my hometown, or he's a newest guy on the block, and that's what I gravitate towards. I mean, that's what our show is kind of centered around, is like those discoveries of smaller makers and builders and players and contributors and stuff. But when you said anxiety, literally the word in my mouth was angst. Because I totally understand that. And you know as well as I mean, you actually referenced it at the towards the beginning of our show. It would have been very easy for a player to come into that scenario and say, "Cool, I have my op amp fuzz pedal and my all the other accoutrement that you might think goes with that band," and you wouldn't sound like it at all. And that's the weird thing about all of that. So chasing the tone, I'm glad that you mentioned that about it being in your hands and your ears.
It's funny because there's always this joke that Billy and I always talk about, because his dad, Billy's dad was a very good blues guitar player, around here in Chicago. And I think when Billy was kind of young and, started making some money, been able to buy gear and have the crazy huge rack, he looked at him and said, one day you'll just want to plug straight in. He's like, dude, what do you mean? Never want to plug straight in. I mean, come on, but the funny thing is every tour, it seems like our pedal boards get a little bit smaller and smaller, and you're getting more to that. Like, oh no, I'm becoming my parent. Even from a guitar perspective, it's. I have to say, I've personally, the reason I started studying jazz is because I'm starting very late in life. I'm terrible at it. It's like the hardest thing I've ever done. I mean, it's such a different mentality of playing.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to learn how to do to accentuate kind of sonics with, pedals and stuff is really be able to make the guitar sound good with just my hands. Yeah. And so that's why learning to play that is like I play an arch top, plug straight in, no pedals, and it's just make it sound good here. And then once you get that, if you can accentuate that with all that, then it's like, I think it's even more powerful. It's more power, and so that's kind of where my personal head has been leading me, is to go, okay, let me figure out how to make the hands do some stuff too and work in conjunction with all this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how much better you can get, because after watching some of your playing, I think I was that's one of the most impressive things I think about your playing, is that you present a feel. It doesn't seem as though you are playing the things that your brain is telling you to play. It's more of an expression of a sonic expression, I guess you could say. It's kind of a wobbly thing to say, but everybody, if you don't know what I'm saying, just go watch some videos of him playing and listen to it, and you'll hear what I mean.
Yeah, it's funny because, you practice and practice and practice, and it's, Tony, my teacher, is like, it's like what he calls drawing circles. Mm-hmm. You just draw in circles and just get better. Or like something like Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan, practicing free throw after free throw. Very simple, basic things. So when you play, you can forget all of it and just play.
Yeah, you know that there's a circle drawing competition. Legitimately, there's actually, it's like a thing because it's so hard to draw a perfect circle.
When they do it, do they compete like all at once, or are there various rounds?
Oh man. All right, that was a groaner. I think that's a good segue. Let's take us to our this or that, and then Jeff will let you go because I know you have to get to some rock and roll stuff.
No, I got actually, some friends. Actually, because my good neighbor of mine, because there's a neighborhood I live in, there's a lot of musicians and stuff, and so a friend of mine, they went on vacation, so I fed their cat, so they're actually taking me out to a nice classic Chicago steak dinner, which is awesome.
Oh, you don't
so that's one of the nicest pleasures about living in Chicago is, a Chicago steak, the Chicago ribeye is, can't get it anywhere else.
My cousin lives up there. I'm going to have to take a little trip up there and see what you're talking about.
Yeah, if you ever come up here, let me know, and I can point you in the right direction,
Cool. Excellent.
Check out,
Excellent. All right, Chris, let's get to this.
We're going to play basically the game Would You Rather, but with one question, and we'll discuss.
And one answer.
Would you rather have a magic portal in your room that you can reach into and pull out any piece of gear ever, literally ever? You could pull out Charlie Christian's guitar or whatever, or a magic portal that you can jump through and go to any concert in history.
Oh, man.
And it's unlimited. For the rest of your life, you have this magic portal.
But you have to choose one or the other. And
One or
that's
the
it.
other. Yeah.
And you're stuck with that one portal, and the
That's
other
the
one's
would you
longer.
rather part of this.
Yeah.
All right, Jeff.
I would definitely rather go to any concert and be able to go back in time and see what that was like, for sure. Because I feel like with the technology that's here, is you can kind of emulate that experience of having the gear a little bit to a certain degree, where you can never really go back and hear Yes in 1973. Yeah, I mean, I want to hear or hear
Good one.
or hear Van Halen 76 at the Whiskey. You know what I mean? There's still a club band. I mean, I would love to hear what that sounded like.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking
Jared.
of Yes, was that a callback to the circle? The circle roundabout.
Oh, man. I'm sorry. That's brutal. Even
grammed
super
us
nerds
again.
just
Sorry,
died.
I'm sorry. My fault.
Okay.
I couldn't resist. It was like right there for the taking.
Okay.
I would rather have the portal myself.
Well, you get a portal.
Well, let me continue here. I would rather go into the portal and go to the concert.
Okay.
I'd rather go to and I know a lot of people will choose this, but I have to go to one of the Madison Square Garden Led Zeppelin shows in '73. Yeah. I want to be front row, and I want to just see the sweat pouring off their faces. I wanted to go to the O2 Led Zeppelin reunion thing for their record guy. I can't pronounce his name right now.
Oh, yeah, the Atlantic Records guy. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a lottery thing, and I didn't get my email drawn, and it cost $1 million to go. But that's what I would want to do. That would just
do it.
That would do it. I could die after that.
Yeah.
Because I'm happy with my gear, I guess.
You got some nice gear, buddy.
It's okay.
Chris, what are you doing?
I'm gonna say gear. And I would say gear, not necessarily just from a pedal standpoint, but to be like, it might be fun to learn the violin. Yoink Stradivarius from 1750. Like you just reach in and grab, something fresh, like out of Leo Fender's hands from, a 1949 Telly that's brand new.
So the value
for the rest of the time.
Well,
you're messing with the space-time continuum.
You were messing with the space-time continuum, but just to like pull something out that was ridiculous like that, like the world's best Steinway piano would be heavy, but and to sit down and just have a few hours goofing around with something that was, the best of any, I would rotate the instruments I was pulling out.
Interesting.
A lot.
Now remember, it's how you play them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To a degree. I'm gonna go with the concert one. I love gear, but I think, Jeff, you made a very good point. You could pretty much get, like, I could reach through and grab Joe Strummer's guitar, which would make me cry, but I can come pretty close, but I could never go back and see him. And that would be something special. So, all right, well, we're gonna let Jeff go get some steak, man.
Awesome. I had it. You know what? I had such a great time. Blew by. Like, I can't believe an hour just went by.
Right?
It's totally fun.
Yeah, super, man. Well, listen, you are welcome back anytime if you got something new that you want to talk about, or whatever. If you just want to shoot the gear crap with us, it's an open door for you.
Oh man,
a portal, if you will.
I'm just as invested in this stuff as you guys. I mean, I'm like I said, I have gear anxiety. So,
well, cool. I really appreciate on the behalf of all of our listeners around the world that we really appreciate you taking your time and nerding out on the gear with us. So, with that, I think there's nothing else except to subscribe.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for these knobs. Please visit us at our website at theguitarknobs.com for episodes, news, and guest profiles. You can get all social with us on our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/guitarknobs. Give us a tweet at guitar_knobs. And check out our gallery on Instagram at Guitar Knobs.